There is a particular kind of silence that settles over a hospital corridor at 3:45 in the morning. The fluorescent lights hum, the linoleum gleams cold and white, and somewhere down the hall, behind a door that no one wants to open, a 10-month-old baby boy has just been declared. His name was Finley Boden. He was born on February 15, 2020, in England, a tiny, bright-eyed baby with luminous blue eyes that made strangers stop and stare. His court-appointed guardian would later say that Finley loved to smile and blow bubbles with his lips. He had just started growing the faintest wisps of blonde hair when the people who were supposed to love him most decided that his 10 months on this earth were enough. He died on Christmas Day. He had been back in his parents' care for exactly 39 days. Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden met in 2017. He was 25, she was 17. Stephen had started smoking by the age of 9 and carried 21 prior criminal convictions on his record, including theft and domestic violence offences. Neighbours described their relationship as one of constant arguments that frequently crossed the line into physical violence. Raised voices, crashes, and the particular silence that follows a fight. Shannon had begun drinking alcohol at the age of 9. When she informed authorities in September 2019 that she was 20 weeks pregnant, a referral to social services followed almost immediately. The concerns were threefold: prohibited drug use, documented domestic violence, and the squalid conditions in which the couple lived. Investigators described the home as deeply unsanitary, barely fit for adults, let alone a child. When Finley was born, the state stepped in almost immediately to protect him. For the first 9 months of his life, he was fostered, cared for, watched over, kept warm and fed and safe. His guardian described those months simply. Finley was healthy, thriving, and happy. He smiled constantly. His blue eyes tracked movement across a room with the bright curiosity of a baby discovering the world for the first time. The prosecuting barrister would later summarize those 9 months in a single sentence that cut through the courtroom like a blade. Away from his parents, Finley was healthy, well cared for, safe, and happy. But Stephen and Shannon wanted their son back. And the family court system, stretched, overworked, operating via telephone during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, gave him to them. In October 2020, a family court hearing took place not in a courtroom, but over the telephone. There was no face-to-face assessment, no in-person scrutiny of the couple's living conditions, and no drug testing ordered, despite cannabis use having been a central concern in Finley's initial removal. The court determined that Stephen and Shannon did not pose an unmanageable risk. Social worker Emily Hollindale, who had been working with the family since January 2020, had recommended a transition period of 4 to 6 months. She had documented serious reservations about their parenting capabilities. Her professional judgment was overridden without ceremony. In the months prior, another social worker had monitored the couple's visits and recorded observations that read, in hindsight, like a masterclass in manipulation. She noted how Shannon kept Finley in the shade on warm days, how Stephen talked to the baby and made him smile, how the fridge was full and the house was clean and tidy. This was a lie. Drug testing conducted months later confirmed that both parents had continued using cannabis throughout. But by then, the decision had already been made. On November 17, 2020, Finley went home. He would never leave again. 19 days later, a social worker observed a lump on Finley's head. Stephen and Shannon had an explanation ready. A toy had struck him. 8 days after that, another social worker arrived unannounced to find a baby sleeping alone on a sofa downstairs, entirely unsupervised, while loud music thumped from a bedroom above. She knocked. Nobody heard her over the music. She left. That was the last time anyone from social services laid eyes on Finley Boden while he was still alive. In the weeks that followed, the picture assembled at trial, from text messages, phone records, and the testimony of medical experts, was one of almost incomprehensible horror. The couple shared a mobile phone used to arrange drug deals to the home where their 10-month-old son lived. Toxicology reports conducted after his death confirmed the presence of illegal substances in his system. In his final days, his parents were smoking cannabis in the same room as him. And then there was a text message sent to a drug supplier in the days before Christmas 2020, containing a phrase so savage that it stopped the courtroom cold when it was read aloud. "I want to bounce him off the walls." 2 days before Christmas, a social worker arrived unannounced and was refused entry. Stephen claimed Finley had a virus. That same day, Shannon Marsden was conducting internet searches for the symptoms of sepsis. She already knew her baby was dying. On Christmas Eve, CCTV footage captured the couple out in town with Finley in his pushchair. At that point, he had sepsis. He was in agony from dozens of fractures. He had pneumonia developing in his lungs and drug toxins in his blood. Instead of driving to a hospital, his parents took him to a supermarket. He died in the early hours of Christmas morning. What the post-mortem examination revealed was so extensive and so brutal that even the detective, who had spent nearly 3 decades investigating violent crimes in Derbyshire, struggled to articulate it without emotion. 71 covered Finley's tiny body. 57. His pelvis had been broken in 2 places, consistent with kicking or stamping. His collarbone, shoulder, shin and thigh bones were broken. His ribs were fractured so severely that these prevented him from clearing mucus from his chest, contributing to the pneumonia that consumed his lungs. He had 2 burns, one on his left hand from a hot flat surface, the other consistent with a cigarette lighter flame. In total, Finley had sustained more than 130 individual injuries. Experts were unequivocal. Injuries of this nature could only have been inflicted by an adult using significant force on multiple separate occasions. By the end, Finley could no longer sit up, could no longer play with his toys, could no longer eat properly. He existed in a permanent state of pain that no 10-month-old baby has the language to describe. And as the judge would later note, with a quietness that carried the weight of the entire trial. Nobody, not once, not ever, reported hearing Finley cry or scream in pain. Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden both pleaded not guilty to child and to causing or allowing the death of a child. The trial at Derby Crown Court ran for more than 5 months. There were days of forensic testimony from pathologists, medical photographs that caused jurors to turn their faces away, and text messages read into the record that made the public gallery go silent. The prosecuting counsel told the court that what had been done to Finley constituted significant, substantial and repeated acts of severe violence carried out by both parents, who knew exactly what harm they were causing and continued regardless. When the jury returned, many of its members in tears, their finding was unanimous. Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden were guilty of murder, guilty on all counts. The judge called them convincing and accomplished liars who had deceived social workers, deceived the courts, and deceived everyone who had tried to give them a chance. Not once, not during the trial, not when the verdict was delivered, not when the sentence was read out, did either of them show a moment of genuine remorse. Stephen Boden was ordered to serve a minimum of 29 years before parole. Shannon Marsden received a minimum term of 27 years.